We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am very excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Veronica Setzke. She is the Senior Director of People Operations at Pax8. Veronica, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself with folks who are listening, including your pronouns and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Great. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. So my pronouns are she and her. And what did I want to be when I was growing up? So I think I grew up in the time of like when Indiana Jones was first introduced. And so I didn't necessarily want to be an archaeologist, but I did want to be an anthropologist, which then translated into me getting my bachelor's in social sciences. And it's honestly really served me very well in staying curious about people. I really am curious about people's motivations, why they do what they do. And then obviously on the people up side, how can I help use that information to help sort of drive culture and make sure that what we have here at Pax8 is really serving our employees.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that a lot of folks in the space are talking about too. How do we kind of meet folks where they are and really see, hear, understand people as well? Thinking about kind of your people and talent strategy, how are you kind of measuring qualitative and quantitatively this dynamic thing of company culture, knowing that, it's going to change when new folks join, people leave, and it's something that's ever growing?
Yeah, for sure. And I love that you added the qualitative piece because I think, a lot of times we get really kind of wrapped up in like, what are the numbers? And it's not all about numbers because we're dealing with actual people. And to your point, things do change as people come and people go. And we're really, the way I like to look at Pax8 is that we're a community. So think of any community, any neighborhood, right? You have people moving in, you have people leaving. And how do you know what's really going on in that community? Well, of course, you have the numbers, right? You have engagement scores like ENPS. You have, we have our pulse survey data. But one of the best exercises that we actually have done at Pax8 that really helped inform us was for us to have stay interviews. So, and these were massively time consuming, but the data that we got out, which was really great, qualitative data, it really helped inform us and have great conversations with those employees. And another thing that it did is also helped us form those relationships. So all of our business partners were heavily engaged in these conversations, and it really helped us understand what people wanted, what was keeping them at Pax8, what might have been driving them sort of away from the Pax8 community. And it actually gave us a lot of really good data on what we can do to make changes to make sure that people are wanting to stay. So I think that was one of the great things that we did. And I think another really easy measure of the culture is just participation, right? You show up to like an EEG group or ERG group meeting, and how many people are there? You have a town hall. How many people are there and how many people are actually engaged and having conversations and asking questions? Are they submitting ideas to your culture committee and saying, hey, I'd really like to see this? I think that's really critical in any community, is to have engaged participants, right? And it's a pretty quick way, right? You show up and nobody's there. What's going on here? Pretty easy way to help measure that culture really quick.
Absolutely. You need to pay attention to what people are saying, what people are not saying, how folks are engaging. And I love that you shared a little bit more about the stay interviews too, because I feel like more folks are talking about really asking people what their motivation is for staying, what they find kind of unique about the organization, and just the why and motivation, how to consistently audit the employee experience. We know that one study showed that just 31% of employees say their company really offers something unique, and only 23% of human resources leaders expect most employees to stay with the firm after the pandemic ends, whenever that is. What is how would you answer the question, what is unique about your company?
I would say, how long do we have? But I know we only have 30 minutes. I would say, I think this is a question that, you hear a lot of leaders say, oh, well, it's our people. Our people are what makes us unique. Our people are what makes us successful. And maybe they, point to something that's on the wall that says something about their people, but, it's the same, I think it's that Pax8, our number one tenet, our number one thing is about our people. And we also have, 4 core values that are innovate, elevate, advocate, and celebrate, all end in 8s. Yes, maybe a little cheesy, but, but we absolutely love those. But I think if you walk around the offices, you're not going to see a bunch of there's no sayings on the wall. You can find it on our website, certainly, but we don't have to have these things plastered everywhere, because we actually live these things every day. I think if you walk around and you were to talk to people and ask them, they would know these things, because they really do. We actually went through this big exercise last year of not getting rid of the values or changing the values, but better deeply defining the values, so that our people could really, regardless of where they are in the organization, they could really deeply connect to them. So, whether you're somebody who's a brand new entry-level salesperson, or whether you're a senior leader that's been in the organization for 7 or 8 years, there's something about that value that you can really, really deeply connect to, and that feels personal to you. And why that's so important, and I think why it's so unique, is that this creates a safe place, right, for people. You have these, you have this safe place where you can take a risk. If it fails, okay, that's fine, right? Because you're trying to elevate, you're trying to innovate. We've already built that sort of into our culture, is being able to take those risks and having these values that really support that behavior. I think another really unique thing that we do, so just over the pandemic, we actually become a global company, and we get a weekly Sunday message from one of our leaders. Sometimes it's someone in the States, sometimes it's someone from somewhere else out in the world. And I think they talk about things that are going on in the business, certainly, but they also connect that to things that they're doing in their own personal life, and how the Pax8 community really brings value. And I think it helps us all connect, regardless of where we are in the globe, which is really hard. I mean, that's, scaling as fast as we have. When I started 2.5 years ago, we were only 350 people. And I think maybe in like 15 states. And now we're over 1,200 in, I don't even know how many countries at this point. It's a lot. And it's really great to kind of know that we all have these things that are commonalities. So that's something that's unique.
Absolutely. And just knowing your values from day 1 to year 2 is really important, and really understanding, not only is it kind of known throughout the employee experience, but also what behaviors are celebrated and things of that nature as well, and really modeling that effective communication behavior from senior leadership, especially as a global organization, in an asynchronous way as well. In terms of values, that a lot of folks really value their employers really showing up for themselves, their families, friendships, communities, and just their full personhood as well. Another study showed that more than 60% of employees say it is really important for them, for their company to share in the caring for specifically their families and communities. How are you and Pax8 showing up for employees, families, as well as the community?
So another one, it's like, okay, how much time do you have? Well, I mean, the last 2.5 years have been, they've been fairly hard. I mean, people are kind of alienated away from, their work life has all been kind of in a back bedroom somewhere or in a corner of your living room. That's never easy. But it's been particularly hard for some of our working parents. I mean, you've got small children at home, or you're trying to do double duty, with a school age child and making sure that they're getting to their online classes on time. And one of the things that we've been, since the very minute that we all had to go home, we've been very, very supportive of our managers communicating that it's okay if you have to be away. It's okay if you need to go, you need to set your schedule around whatever your family life is, because that's important. It's critical to people being healthy at work. If they're always, stressed about something going on in the background, it makes it a lot harder to be present at work. And so we've really communicated to our managers that we need to support those working parents, and we need to make it easier for them. Give them a split schedule if they need that. If they need to take flexible vacation, access that. Let's do that. Just, we have to trust our people to do the things that we want them to do. And so really demonstrating that trust by putting in this flexibility, I think, is super important to support those families. Another thing that is something that we're doing to support not just our community. I mean, I guess there are communities once we're there, but we have a program called Pax8 Rural Empowerment Program. And this is really where we help those rural communities thrive. So it's really hard to find talent these days. And, we know that there's a lot of great talent in rural communities, and those people don't want to leave where they live. So we've actually partnered with different economic development corporations that are founded in these small communities to help create offices that have the resources that employees need in rural. Because if you're rural, you may not have great Wi-Fi at your home. If you're living out in the mountains or you're living out on a ranch, you may not have access to that kind of service. So we actually established our first in Fremont County. So we have an office there. People can come into the office and they can work for Pax8 in a rural setting. And it's actually been really great. I mean, we have had such incredible responses by the community, by other communities saying, hey, we'd like to have that here. And so we're expanding the program throughout the US. So that's another way. And then I'm really excited because we actually just created a corporate social responsibility leader at the organization. And so this person is actually going to be in charge of all of our corporate social responsibility programs. And so I'm really excited to see where she's going to take that, because, even though we do a lot of volunteering, even though we do a lot of donations, and then we have this rural empowerment program, they've never really sort of had a singular place to live. They've always been kind of like this employment group or this group over here. And so this is going to be all coordinated. And I'm really excited about where that's going.
That is exciting. And I appreciate the kind of different examples as well, especially partnering with folks, being really intentional about where you're sourcing talent to. And I think that another kind of piece of the employee experience that people are really talking about, you might not be talking to the senior director of people operations or the CEO every day, but you are speaking with other leaders and managers on a daily basis. How are you thinking about empowering leaders in your organization to really drive forward your strategic vision, no matter what department they're in?
So, I mean, this is such a great question, but it's also a really big question, right? Um, there's we really like to think about equity in a lot of different ways, whether it's pay equity, in a way that we're looking at, diversity and really helping our leaders develop and understand what all of these things mean. So as far as pay equity goes, I got to tell you, here in Colorado, we have a pay equity act that went into place in, I want to say January of 2021. And a lot of employers really struggled with it because we were going to have to publish salaries with our job, with our job postings and all of these things. And actually, it really gave Pax8 a great opportunity to bring forth some of the work that we were already doing and really make sure that our employees understood the work that we were putting in to make sure that there was pay equity, whether, it's entry level employees, whether it's, a director over in this side of the organization to a director in this side of the organization. Our total rewards department has done a lot of work to making sure that there's an equity in the pay that we're giving to our men, our women, our people of color, regardless of your age. If you're at the same level of work, there should be equity right there, right? And so we really saw that as an opportunity to make sure that the work that was being done was seen and that people understood that this was something that we took very seriously. You're talking about equity, with regard to D&I, I think we look at this from a lot of angles. First of all, we look at sort of, all of the various types of diversity that we can have. Whether it's race or age or socioeconomic, parental status, neurodiversity, all the ones, gender, sexual identity, sexual orientation, all of those. And then also all of those intersectionalities, right? Because none of us are just one thing. We have all of these things that make up who we are. And that's the fun part of being and people access is just all of the complexity. But for me, that equity piece isn't just about counting the people and making sure that everything is fair. I think it's really making sure that everyone's voices are being counted, that we're hearing them and that we're approaching their needs in the right way, because what one person needs may not be the same thing as what another person needs. And that's equity, right? I mean, if everybody got exactly the same thing, well, maybe that's fair, but that might not meet the needs of every single person. So we really like to make sure that we're looking at all of these things and informing ourselves here in the people org, because without taking a really deep look at that, then we can't inform leadership. And that's where the next thing is really looking at leadership and helping them develop and understand all of these complexities that we're dealing with and why you can't treat, Bob the same way that you can treat Jane, and, and just provide a flat, here you go, this is what you get, because everyone is different. And we want to make sure every person at Pax8 is able to thrive and that they're getting the things that they need so that they have that equity. So that's a really complicated answer for that question, but.
No, I appreciate the examples you gave and just the specificity of it as well. I definitely agree when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion. What are we talking about, and you can't approach this work as a one size fits all as well, and really talking about meeting folks where they are, whether we're talking about working parents or we're talking about kind of another group of individuals as well, and really thinking critically about the non-negotiables we set up, the type of work environment, and also that flexibility piece too, because there's a ton of research out there that says if you make the workplace better for working parents, it's better literally for everybody as well working at an organization. You mentioned a little bit about resourcing people to thrive and do their best work. How do you measure the effectiveness of those kind of managers, especially first-time managers who are navigating the waters for the first time?
Oh yeah. You get those first time people, and hopefully it's not just because they did great in their individual contributor role, right? Because we have some rock stars that, I've been in organizations where those rock stars, hey, you're doing incredible at your job. Let's make you a manager. Different skill set, different set of competencies. And unfortunately, a lot of times you're setting them up to fail if you aren't giving them the right development and tools. And I think here at Pax8, we've done a really, really great job in a couple of different ways. So the first is that for any of our new managers or people that we're considering to be managers, they're not even managers yet. We have a course called the Principles of Pax8. And so we make sure that those people who are really interested in a leadership position are kind of going through it and getting a taste of what all of those tools that they'll need to really succeed as a leader are. There are exercises, there's interactions with their manager that they have to have. It's very, very, and it's not content shoved at them. It's very, very participatory. You have to make sure that you're participating in order to really grasp these concepts, because, managing people is a team sport. And then once somebody's been elevated, and yes, that is with an 8, we elevate here. Managers are then put in leadership at Pax8. And so these are active classes that they can actually leave that session and actually put into place right away. We also help them understand what all of their resources are, because as an individual contributor, you interact with people ops in a different way. You interact with talent acquisition in a different way than you would as a leader. And so we make sure that they understand what resources are available to them and how they can best partner with those and who those partners are for them. And then one of the things that we're actually just starting to implement, and I'm really excited about this, is that we're going to be doing, after sort of leadership at Pax8 ends, they're still going to have additional courses, and we're going to start doing some follow-up on, hey, how are things going? And we're actually taking some of the metrics from our quarterly development conversations to kind of determine, hey, this person was in leadership at Pax8 Q1, it's Q3, what do their scores look like? What are those peer reviews? What are those 360s looking like? And really using some of that data metrics behind the scenes that we can really kind of make sure people are thriving. And if they're not, what can we do to help lift them up? How can we help them be a better manager? So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, and not only providing those resources, the programming, making sure it's participatory, that follow-up is so important to continue the conversation, get that feedback, and continue to make sure people are thriving and set up for success in their roles, especially managing a team as well. I feel like nobody is born a fantastic people manager. It's something that you need to practice, learn, continue to learn as well. You talked a little bit about this as well in kind of your programming and pay equity and all of the opportunities that you have here as well. We've heard a lot in the industry around people just redesigning systems, business as usual is out the window because it had to be. Can you tell me about how you've redesigned a system to be more equitable over the past 2 years, whether it's a process, policy, or initiative?
Yeah, I actually came into my office today, and you can't see it behind me, but there's a whiteboard. And I realized that what's on the whiteboard was from right before we left for COVID.
Mhm.
And the things that are on that board, it just feels like they were so far past us. Like we've done like everything that was on there. And so, we have really spent the last 2 years building and making sure that, um, we understand the impact that being work from home has had, and really making sure that we're training our leaders in a different way. Um, and I think one of the things that I would say again, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, is really all the work that we've done around that Colorado pay equity law. And while that was, prior to us leaving the offices for COVID, I think it was so important because I think it really shined a bright light on the work that we were doing to make sure that everyone was being paid according to their talent and right within, what others of that same talent were getting paid. I think that is so important, and especially in tech, whenever we're trying to attract women and we're trying to attract, people of color, and we're trying to attract just this huge diversity. We can't do that if the world doesn't know that we are focused on this. And I think we want to be thinking 5 years out, and we can't do that if we're still trying to get our house right with regard to equity. And I think the other thing is that we've just invested in so much training for our people on this topic, everything from, obviously our annual discrimination and harassment training, but also thinking about things like bias. That's a required course for all of our managers here to take. Understanding microaggressions, that's another critical thing that I think has really come to the forefront over the last 2 years. And I don't really see a whole lot of it out there in some of your, traditional trainings that you give to managers. And it's so important to recognize whenever there are microaggressions going on, because it is such a dehumanizing thing, right? So that I would say that, really kind of focusing and, with the pay equity, and then also making sure that we're looking kind of outside of like the typical, walls of discrimination and harassment training, and really making sure we're expanding what those things mean, or the things that can have impact in that area.
Absolutely. Ensuring that you have relevant, top of mind content. I've seen some more folks kind of get into the conversations really specifically around microaggressions, which is really great to hear as well. And again, that investment in time, resources for managers and all of the kind of team as well is so important. Veronica, is there anything that I didn't ask throughout our conversation that you would like to share or highlight, or, sharing 1 to 2 key takeaways you hope people bring with them after hearing our conversation today?
I think one of the things that has really made my team and Pax8, to be honest, really successful is just try new stuff. Just try it. Like, the idea is to get 80% of anywhere on your idea, and then just start trying it out, right? You'll get the other 10% figured out through whatever mistakes you make. We all make mistakes. Again, safe place to make them. And then the other 10%, it doesn't really matter, because you're always going to be redefining and always pushing that concept just a little bit harder, so that other little bit of space always gives you room to grow it and develop it and make it better. And then, also just stay curious about why people do the stuff they do. Like, if you stay curious, the data, both qualitative and quantitative, is going to really help clear up the stories you might have started telling yourself. And then you actually have an opportunity to do something, which kind of goes back to the first point.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to test something, try something, continue to ask for feedback, and think about that company culture that you're trying to cultivate as well, setting people up for success. Veronica, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christina.
Of course, and as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood, and know it's a requirement for the business to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.